In a small town on the edge of the region, there was an old street called Lesnichaya. The houses looked abandoned, yet people still lived there quiet. Secretive people who almost never spoke to their neighbors. Rumor had it that things would go missing there, and sometimes even people. A young man who left and never came back. An old woman who vanished, leaving her door wide open. The police always wrote it off as coincidence. But the locals whispered, that street is alive. It takes people. The main character is Anton, a young journalist, ambitious and reckless, who worked in the crime section of a local newspaper. One day, his editor jokingly said, "Want to make a sensation? Investigate Lesnichaya Street? They say a whole house disappeared there." Anton smirked. But the idea stuck. A house vanishing? Ridiculous. But the more absurd the rumor, the bigger the story. He arrived in the evening, carrying a camera and a recorder. The street greeted him with strange silence. No street lights. Only a few windows dimly glowing. The air felt heavy. As if it were watching him, he knocked on the first house. A middle-aged woman opened the door, her face pale and terrified. "Leave. Please, don't stay here." "But why?" he asked. She said nothing and slammed the door shut. As he walked further, Anton noticed something strange. On the town map, Lesnichaya Street existed, but on his GPS, it was just empty space. At the very end of the street stood a decaying two-story house. In the upstairs window, he thought he saw a shadow move. He turned on the camera and stepped onto the porch. The door creaked open. Inside, the air smelled of dampness. Old photographs hung on the walls, every face scribbled over with black ink. Suddenly, he heard a whisper, "You'll stay here too." Anton spun around. No one, just the creak of the floorboards. He climbed to the second floor. On a dusty table lay neatly arranged belongings: a wallet, a cell phone, a pair of glasses. Each item was tagged with a name. Among them, he recognized the passport of a man who had gone missing a month ago. His hands shook as he filmed everything. Then he froze. Among the items lay a fresh business card from his own newspaper. Beside it was a tape recorder, already switched on. From it played his own voice. "I came here to investigate," but he didn't remember ever recording the at that moment. The front door downstairs slammed shut. Anton rushed down, but the door was locked tight. From the outside, he banged and shouted. The only answer was silence, followed by a faint echo. Then, the realization hit him. The street wasn't just frightening, it was swallowing people. Every victim left behind a trace of thing, a photo, a recording. With trembling hands, he turned the camera on himself. One last time. "If anyone finds this, run from Lesnichaya. Never come here." There was a sound, a creak, and the camera hit the floor. The next morning, police found only his car. The house he'd entered was gone. In its place stood an overgrown lot, as if no building had ever existed. And yet, the camera was lying neatly on the passenger seat. The recording ended with Anton's final words. "There is a story circulating online about the so-called Russian sleep experiment, the result of which was madness and death for all participants. Yet to this day, the question remains, was it real or just a fabrication? Today, we will try to find out. Let's go." The experiment allegedly took place in the late 1940s. It was supposedly conducted by Soviet researchers on a group of political prisoners. The subjects were locked in a chamber for 15 days, not allowed to sleep, while being exposed to a special stimulant gas. The room was equipped with microphones and thick glass windows through which the scientists could observe them. The prisoners were provided with food, water, a toilet, and books. They were promised freedom if they could last a whole month without sleep. For political prisoners serving long sentences, this was quite the motivation. At first, everything seemed normal. The scientists observed ordinary daily routines. Over time, however, the conversations of the prisoners grew darker, focusing on grim thoughts and past events. After 5 days, they began complaining about their circumstances and showed strong paranoia. They whispered into the microphones, reporting on each other, as if they thought betraying their fellow prisoners would earn the scientists' trust. At first, the researchers believed this was just an effect of the gas. On the 10th day, one subject suddenly began screaming and running around the chamber, continuing for more than 3 hours until he tore his vocal cords. Surprisingly, the others didn't react, only whispering into the microphones. Then a second subject started screaming as well. The remaining ones tore pages from books, soaked them with saliva, and plastered them over the windows. For a while, the screaming and whispering stopped. For 3 days, there was complete silence. The scientists noted that oxygen consumption in the chamber was so high, it was as if all 5 subjects were doing heavy exercise. On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers announced through the intercom that they would open the chamber to test the microphones, ordering the subjects to lie flat on the floor or be shot, promising one of them would be freed if they cooperated. The only response was, "We no longer want to be freed." On the 15th day, the gas was flushed out and replaced with fresh air. Immediately, 3 voices began pleading for the gas to be restored. As if their lives depended on it, soldiers entered the chamber to remove the subjects, and the screams intensified. 4 of the 5 were still alive, but their state could hardly be called living. Food supplies from day 5 remained untouched. The chamber was flooded with about 10 centimeters of water mixed with blood, as the drains were clogged with body parts of the 5th subject. The 4 survivors had torn large chunks of flesh and muscle from their bodies. Their abdominal organs were ripped out and strewn across the floor, while their lungs could be seen through their exposed ribs. Further investigation revealed they had mutilated themselves with their own hands, not with their teeth. These barely living people screamed for the gas that would keep them awake. Even seasoned soldiers refused to enter the chamber. When volunteers finally attempted to remove the bodies, the subjects resisted violently. One soldier had his throat ripped out. Another had his femoral artery bitten through. One subject died from blood loss after damaging his spleen. Medical staff tried sedatives, but even 10 times the normal dose of morphine had no effect. One continued fighting, breaking ribs and an arm of one of the doctors. His heart kept beating for 2 minutes after all his blood had drained, and even after his heart stopped, he continued screaming more, before finally going silent. The remaining 3 were restrained and taken to a hospital to still demanded the stimulant gas. One was placed on the operating table to have his organs returned to his body. It took great effort to hold him down, even with a soldier weighing over 80 kilograms. Doctors had to use an unusually strong dose of anesthetic to sedate him. The moment he closed his eyes, his heart stopped. Tests later showed his blood oxygen level was 3 times higher than normal. His muscles were destroyed and 9 bones were broken. The second survivor was the one who had first begun screaming. He shook his head, refusing anesthesia. When someone suggested performing surgery without it, he nodded. He endured a 6-hour operation without a word, only smiling at a nurse who later said she was horrified by the sight. It was, as one doctor put it, medically impossible for him to be alive. After surgery, he wrote on a piece of paper, "Keep cutting." The 3rd subject also underwent surgery without anesthesia. He had to be paralyzed because he kept laughing and struggling. When allowed to speak, he demanded the return of the stimulant gas. To every question of why they tore their skin, ripped out their organs, and why they wanted the gas, their only answer was, "We must not fall asleep." They were returned to the chamber while the researchers debated what to do. The NKVD officer in charge ordered the gas be restored to see what would happen, despite objections from the scientists. Once the subjects were connected to EEG monitors, their resistance stopped, but they struggled desperately to stay awake. One screamed loudly. Another rubbed his legs against the straps to stay alert. The third kept his head lifted and blinked rapidly. The EEG showed normal brain activity, with occasional flat lines. As if the brain briefly entered death, one nurse noticed that when a subject's eyes finally closed, his EEG switched instantly to deep sleep, then to flatline. As his heart stopped, another subject screamed for the gas. His EEG showed the same gaps of brain activity. The NKVD commander ordered 2 subjects and 3 scientists locked in the chamber with the gas. One scientist, horrified, pulled out a gun and shot the commander, then killed the mute subject and aimed at the last survivor. Everyone else fled. The scientist shouted, "I won't go in there with those creatures. Tell me, what are you? I must know." The subject smiled. "Have you forgotten so easily? We are you. We are the madness within you, begging to be set free at any moment, deep inside your animal mind. We are what you hide from every night. We are what you try to silence and paralyze when you sleep." The scientist shot him in the heart. With his last breath, the subject whispered, "So close to freedom." And with that, the story ends. So, what conclusions can we draw? Most likely, this so-called experiment never really happened. It's simply a creepypasta, an internet horror story. From a scientific perspective, we know our bodies require regular sleep. Sleep restores the brain, muscles, and bones, and slows down bodily processes for rest. The average adult needs at least 6 to 8 hours of sleep per night. Neglecting this leads to serious consequences. 1 sleepless night, fatigue, reduced attention, memory issues. 2 to 3 nights, impaired coordination, blurred vision, speech problems, nausea. Nervous tics. 4 to 5 nights, extreme irritability, hallucinations, delirium. 6 to 8 nights, slowed speech, trembling limbs, weakness, memory loss, strange behavior. 11 nights. The Guinness World Record belongs to Rainey Gardner, a 17-year-old student who in 1963 stayed awake for 11 days straight. By the end, he was hallucinating, disoriented, and could barely speak, but fortunately recovered after sleeping for 15 hours, with no lasting health effects. So, from a scientific point of view, the Russian sleep experiment is just a scary story. Or is it? After all, we don't know what stimulant gas was supposedly used. Perhaps the experiment really happened, and the documents remain classified to this day. What do you think? Leave your comments below. And remember, don't spend 10 nights awake at your computer scrolling through social media. Get a good night's sleep. It's vital for your health.